What's up, guys? Welcome back to DCS World. Welcome back aboard the Hornet for another tutorial. Today we're going to take a first look at some of the air-to-ground munitions available on the Hornet. Air-to-ground munitions come in a few different flavors. We've got general purpose bombs, GPS guided bombs, laser guided bombs, a whole plethora that we will cover in subsequent videos. Today we're going to take a look at general purpose unguided bombs, as well as a flavor of cluster munition, and we're going to drop them in one of two modes. The first mode is CCIP, which stands for Continuously Computed Impact Point, and what that means is that the targeting computer of the Hornet is continuously updating an impact point on the ground for which we can target our bombs. In more layman's terms, CCIP generally means that we are going to dive bomb on the target. The other mode that we can drop bombs in the Hornet is referred to as auto mode. In other aircraft, this is also referred to as CCRP, or Continuously Computed Release Point. And then what this means is that the weapon system is updating a release point based on a designated target on the ground for which our bombs will be released. And that generally means that we're going to be releasing them in level flight. For the most part, you don't necessarily have to be in level flight for these, but the most common use for auto/CCRP is a level drop. Now we have a couple of bombs on the aircraft today for our demonstration here. Let's look over at our stores page real quick. So on the stores page, I have Mark 83s, which is a 1,000 pound unguided general purpose bomb. The general purpose bombs also come in a few other flavors. Mark 82, which is the 500 pound variant. And I also have Mark 84 on the airplane, which is a Big Bertha 2,000 pound variant. We're going to use our Mark 84 a little bit later to look at auto bombing. For this first demonstration, we're going to use our Mark 83s for a CCIP bomb attack. So the first thing we need to do, as with all weapons, is we need to get our master arm on. We need to get ourselves, this time, into air-to-ground mode. And from our stores page here, we're going to use this push button to select our Mark 83s. So let's take a look at some of the things we have here. We have Program 1, and you can actually set up some different release programs, but we're going to stick with Program 1 here. We have the master mode that it's in. The mode indicated, as I mentioned, is going to be CCIP. If we wanted to change that mode, we could change it from the mode button here. We have auto. FD stands for Flight Director, which is currently not implemented. CCIP, as I mentioned, and also a manual mode for if auto or CCIP are not available. So in our case, we're going to stick with CCIP. We also need to set up the fuses on these bombs. So we have M fuse, which stands for mechanical fuse. This namely refers to the crush fuse that's on the nose of the bomb itself. So if we select this, we're going to want to set it to a nose fuse. And then we have E fuse, which stands for electronic fuse. If we select this, a couple of options. We can turn the E fuse off, which essentially means the bomb won't explode on impact, which, why would you want that? We have instantaneous, which means the bomb will explode immediately upon impact. And we have delay 1 and 2, which means the bomb will penetrate its target a little bit and then explode after a certain delay. For our purposes here, we're going to select instantaneous. And as I mentioned, we have two Mark 83s on the airplane here. So let's set these up to drop in a pair. So how we do that is we go over here and we click on UFC. And I'm just going to zoom out a little bit so you can see this, both the stores page and my UFC. We have a couple of options here. We could set the quantity of bombs that we want to drop. So in our case, if we hit this and we hit 2, we're going to drop 2 bombs. And we can set the multiples of bombs that we want to drop. So if we were to drop these in multiples of 1, This would essentially set up a ripple, but we'll demonstrate a ripple with the cluster munitions. For this, we're going to drop pairs, so we want quantity of 2 in multiples of 2. That essentially sets up pairs dropping. So if we look at our stores page again, we have quantity 2, multiples of 2, and you could set this up any which way you want. Let's say you had, 4 or 6 of the same bombs and you wanted to drop them in a ripple pairs sort of setup. You could do quantity 2, multiple of 2 with a distance in between them, and that would set up a ripple. Again, we'll come back to that concept in just a little bit. But for now, these bombs are set up, so let's go find a target to roll on into. So stand by while I get us lined up for a target drop. Alright, I've got some targets on the palm here on the Persian Gulf off to my right. So what we're going to do is start turning in on them here, kick my autopilot off and my throttle control off. We're at about 20,000 feet. You want to be a little bit high up for this because the Hornet is a fast jet as compared to something like an A-10. So we're going to turn in just a little bit. We're going to go for one of the targets on the tips of the palm there. Let's go for that one. And let's roll on in on the target. So we're going to roll somewhat inverted here and turn towards him. And we'll go for that guy right there. Now, quick pause. I just want to point a few things out on the HUD. We have our bomb fall line, which extends down from our path vector. This is going to point down. Let me pause the camera there. We have the bomb fall line. This extends down from the path vector down to our bomb cross, which is actually below the HUD right now. This horizontal line here represents the essentially an inverse of where the bomb fall pipper actually is, and this is going to fall towards the bottom of the HUD as we dive closer onto the target. And you're going to see that cross pop up here. What we're going to want to do is line up that cross on the target, and then we're going to press and hold weapon release, and that should drop the bombs. So let's unpause here. I'm actually going to keep my camera zoomed in on the HUD a little bit, as I would normally do for a CCIP drop. Optionally, you could pop your speed brake out here. There's the cross at the bottom there. It's coming up. It's going to cross over the targets now and weapon release. Bombs are away. We're going to pull up, roll a little bit, and watch to see if our bombs hit. Kaboom! Actually, think I got all 4 of those trucks there. That was pretty good. And as you notice from our stores page, both bombs have come off of the rails, so we dropped those as a pair. So let me get back up to altitude here real quick, and we'll set up our cluster munitions. Alright, so we're back up to above 20,000 feet where we can set up our other munitions here. So let's look again at the stores page. We have on the aircraft a pair of CBU-99 cluster munitions denoted by RET. Why it says RET, I'm not sure for the CBU-99, but just know that RET represents the CBU-99. As for cluster munitions, we also have available to us the Mark 20 Rockeye. Functionally, the CBU-99 and the Mark 20 Rockeye are basically functionally identical. They all contain, I believe it is a little over 200 submunitions per canister, and they work pretty much the same. So we're going to select RET. Just like before, we can select our mode. We're going to stick with CCIP once again. We have an M fuse. Now, instead of a nose fuse, we're actually going to select VT, which stands for variable timed. So if we click this, we now have a new button down the bottom here labeled HT. This stands for height. And if you notice in the program listing, we have a label for the height here, currently set to 300 feet. Now, the CBU-99 and the Mark 20 Rockeye are hard configured on the ground to splinter open at 1,500 feet, irregardless of what this setting here displays. However, for our CCIP to actually compute the proper impact point, we do need to set this height function here. So what we're going to do is click this height function a couple of times until our height function here reads 1,500. All right. We also can go to eFuse once again and select instantaneous. Now for this bomb, let's set these up to drop in a ripple. So how do we do that? Once again, we click on UFC. We're going to go over here. As before, we're going to select quantity, and our quantity is going to be 2. Enter. And in this case, it's going to be multiples of 1. So 2 bombs in multiples of 1. And we're going to select an interval. Now the CCIP ripple intervals in the Hornet are computed in distance. So it's a ripple distance measured in feet. And in this case, let's say we want to do 50 feet. So 50 and enter. And if we notice here, we have interval set to 50, quantity 2, multiple of 1. Actually, I have a slight correction there. The eFuse needs to be set to off. So there is actually no electronic fuse in the CBU-99. So that's a slight correction there for the CBU-99. All right, so let's get set up for another drop on one of these targets using a very similar attack profile as before. So stand by while I line myself up in a good position. All right, I've got those targets off to my right here, so I'm going to click off my auto throttle and autopilot and roll on in just as before. A little bit exaggerated this time, but that's all right. Same symbology as before. We have the bomb fall line. And that's going to drop to the bottom of our display as the bomb pipper comes in. Pulling my throttles to idle, opening the speed brake so I don't get too fast in the dive. There's the pipper. And release. Press and hold the button and both bombs should come off. And they came off in succession this time rather than as a pair. Let's watch those hit. And they did hit there. The cluster munitions don't really produce that big of a bang, so trust me, when they did actually detonate on the target there, they just did not actually destroy anything. One thing to keep in mind with the cluster bombs is their individual bomblets must directly strike something to destroy it. They don't really have much in the way of area effect damage, which is somewhat unfortunate, but it's just the nature of how these particular cluster bombs work. Let's get back up to altitude now, and we will talk about the Mark 84 in a CCRP/auto bomb drop. All right, so we're back up at altitude. We don't need to be up that high this time since we're not going to dive on the target. We're going to set up our Mark 84, so let's zoom in again on our stores page in UFC. We'll select the Mark 84s. Very, very similarly to the Mark 83s, we're going to go mode. This case, we're going to go auto. Again, auto in the Hornet is analogous to CCRP in other airplanes. M-fuse is going to go to nose. E-fuse is going to go to instantaneous. And since we only have one bomb, we can only drop a quantity of 1 and a multiple of 1, so not much else to do there. So let's unpause the camera and take a look at how we actually denote a target for the CCRP drop. Now, with CCIP, we just dive on a target that we pick up with our eyes. With CCRP, we have to denote a target on the ground. How do we do that? Well, by pressing sensor select switch forward. In air-to-ground mode, we've assigned the TDC to the HUD. Now let's zoom in real quick and take a quick pause at what we have. We've got some new symbology on the HUD. We have a similar bomb fall line, however it is now a dashed line that falls down to a small dot with a bunch of hash lines forming a circle around it. This is colloquially known as the ball and chain. So it looks like a ball on a chain that leads up to the path vector. Also, one thing to note is that if the TDC is assigned to the HUD, you will have a little dot inside of your velocity vector here. Now, what we need to do to set up a target is we need to align the bottom of this ball and chain on top of the target that we want to drop on. And it's a little tricky to do. However, it does give us a bit of an opportunity to correct it if we need to, if it's not exactly where we want it to be. So stand by while I turn around and get lined up with the targets to designate them. All right, so we're lining up with the targets over here at the palms once again. I'm going to stick my airplane in active pause just so we have a moment to talk. Now, I mentioned the ball and chain, and that's what we use to actually designate a target on the ground. Let me just pause track IR there. The way we designate the target is with the TDC assigned to the HUD. We then do TDC depress, and that's going to drop a marker on the ground, as you can see right here. Now, this marker is our target. Now, we can align ourselves to line the ball and chain up on the target if we wish, or we can then go TDC slew to move it around. And this is moving around based on our inertial navigation system, INS. So what I'm actually going to do is let's unpause the camera, zoom in real close just so we get a good look. I'm going to try to line this marker up on those targets right about there. A little bit unrealistic since we're in active pause, but I'm just doing this so you get the idea of how it works. So we have now aligned that CCRP target up on those targets there. And if I zoom out, unpause everything, and I actually unpause the sim and fly around, that target should stick to that area right about there. And we also have some symbology on the HUD that we can talk about real quick. I'm just going to pop an active pause once again. We have auto mode determined here. We have our distance to the target right now is 6.6 miles. And when we're lined up with the target, we'll also have a time to release. So let me get turned around, get a little bit of distance, and we can see what all of that looks like. So stand by while I turn around and get some distance. Okay, so quick active pause while we're lined up with the target. I mentioned before we have auto. Since we're lined up with the target, we also have a time to release. In this case, we have 56 seconds to release. And we have our distance to the target here at 8.5 miles. So what we're going to do is we're going to approach the target. We're going to try to get this steering line lined up with our path vector as best we possibly can. And we're going to wait for this time to release to count down. When it's below about 10 seconds, we're going to press and hold our weapon release button, and there's going to be a line that falls down from the top of this steering line towards our path vector. When it intersects with our path vector, as long as we are holding weapon release, the bomb will come off the rail automatically. So let's see what that looks like. Reset my camera and unpause the sim and get ourselves nice and lined up with the target. One more quick pause just to look. We also have an indication that tells us our relative slant angle to the target. So in this case, since it's off of our HUD, the HUD is telling me that the target is 16 degrees below us with this arrow pointing down here. So just something to keep in mind, a little bit of additional symbology to help you realize where your target is. So once again, we're unpaused. Trying to keep that steering line lined up with our path vector, and I'm doing a fairly good job of it right now, so hopefully I hold it. As we get closer, it's going to be a little bit more erratic, so be prepared to do very little corrections. 20 seconds to release now. It's getting a little off center, so I need to correct to the left slightly. 10 seconds to release. I'm holding weapon release. There's the line coming down. When it intersects the path vector, bombs away. And now we also have a time to impact on our HUD, counting down from when the bomb's release. So about 18 seconds to release. Since this one was a CCRP drop, let's actually watch it fall. So there's our bomb there. Going to the target. It actually may fall short. It looks like it's going to fall short. And splash in the water. Okay, so that wasn't great. But that's actually one of the pitfalls of auto/CCRP bombing with unguided bombs. The accuracy of CCRP bombing is significantly less than CCIP bombing. It's just because of the nature of it. Sometimes that target indicator can drift a little bit. Sometimes your release isn't perfect. Sometimes your speed might change. There are a number of factors that can affect it. But as a general rule, CCRP/auto bombing with unguided general purpose bombs is going to be a little bit less accurate, and sometimes very much less accurate than CCIP bombing. Reasons you would use auto bombing, however, is if you don't want to dive low, close to targets such as AAA or man pads, or low-level short-range SAMs could get in your way. Also, if you're rippling off a lot of bombs in quick succession over a wide area, an auto bombing method could be useful because you're not really caring about accuracy that much, as you're more concerned about getting a large number of weapons on a general area to cause widespread damage. So just something to keep in mind as to the accuracy of these different bombing modes. But that's pretty much it for unguided bombing in the Hornet. Stay tuned for more videos on some of the different air-to-ground weapons coming up soon. So hope you enjoy, and we'll see you next time. Take care.